See, the lighting changed even as I am continuing to record because the sun is setting behind me. My apartment faces due east and due west is behind me. It's here 4:45 p.m. So where am I? I'm talking about taking risk, and we just talked about discounting the future, and this is a big deal actually. Every time you think about cost benefit analysis about investments in adaptation and mitigation, you have to assume an interest rate with which you discount the future, and whether you assume 3% or 10%, the rate at which the value depreciates can be massively different, and that's often used to resist investments. So continuing with taking risks, human beings also tend to have difficulty in comprehending the scale of the problem, the sustainability challenge that we are talking about. It is not merely rooted in numeracy, although familiarity with with mathematics may help people grasp the difference between large numbers such as millions, billions, trillions. But this tendency is called scale insensitivity or scope insensitivity, or scope neglect even, and this results in people considering similar responses regardless of whether the problem is tens, hundreds, or even thousands of times bigger. People just are neglecting the scope of the problem or the scale, that they are not sensitive to the scale. It's been demonstrated in countless studies. In the most well-known study, 3 groups of participants were asked to state their household's willingness to contribute money to prevent the drowning of 2,000, 20,000, or 200,000 migratory birds in ponds polluted with oil, respectively, which resulted in average amounts of $80, $78, or $88, and no statistically significant difference between the groups, even when the consequences differed by 2 orders of magnitude. So saving 2,000 versus 200,000 birds, but the numbers they threw in terms of their contribution was basically unrelated to the scale of the problem. Other studies demonstrate similar results. For instance, residents of 4 states in the western United States would only pay 28% more to protect all 57 wilderness areas in those states than to protect a single site. So even though there are 57 versus 1, the change in the contribution is only 28%. Or Toronto residents would pay only a little more to clean up all polluted lakes in the entire province of Ontario than the polluted lakes in only a small part of Ontario. Okay, you get the point. Such scale insensitivity has similar roots as another tendency also hampering our ability to estimate probabilities or frequencies. This tendency is called conjunction fallacy and makes people inclined to intuitively assign a higher probability or frequency to a specific event occurring than to a broader category of events, even if the former is part of the latter. So you have a category of events like climate impacts versus something specific like a winter storm, and people cannot distinguish. They assign similar frequencies and probabilities. For example, people may estimate that it is more likely for a cyclone to hit Bangladesh than a natural hazard in general, and that a major interstate war between China and Taiwan is more likely than a major interstate war overall in Asia. Regardless of how, I am getting a call, so I have to pause here for a minute. Okay, so that was an important call asking me to pay a rent. It's a complicated situation here. I moved into a new apartment where some part of my salary is supposed to be cut for rent, but they are saying I have to pay additional or something. Anyway, so we're talking about scale intensity and how people misassign these frequencies and probabilities. So the conjunction policy also makes people inclined to assign a higher probability or frequency to the conjunction of 2 statements than to the constituting statements themselves. Hence the name of conjunction fallacy. For instance, people may consider the statement that a cyclone hits Bangladesh and causes floods more likely than either of the two statements, that cyclone hits Bangladesh or cyclone causes floods. Okay, so complicated, but this results in how people take decisions on collective actions such as sustainability. Okay, so this reasoning is also logically flawed. Even if cyclones would always cause floods, the conjunction of a cyclone and floods can never have a higher probability than the probability of a cyclone or the probability of the floods, respectively. So probabilities usually multiply and they are fractions, so you have to understand how the combined probabilities work. They cannot be higher than individual probabilities. Yet intuitive estimations of probability or frequency do not conform to the logic of probability theory. Okay, so here is the conjunction fallacy visualized. A cyclone hits Bangladesh, floods hit Bangladesh. Together, a cyclone hits Bangladesh and causes floods. So people give this certain probability and they estimate certain probability for this. But if asked about them occurring together, they give a much higher probability, which is mathematically flawed as well. The effects of positive illusions can also be exacerbated by another cognitive bias related to the illusory superiority just mentioned. It is called Dunning-Kruger effect, after the scholars who first described it, the positive illusion, and suggests that people of low ability may suffer from delusory superiority and mistakenly assess their cognitive ability as greater than it is. Wow, you know lots of people in your daily life who experience the Dunning-Kruger effect. Nichols, in his 2017 report, puts it more bluntly. The Dunning-Kruger effect in sum means that the dumber you are, the more confident you are that you are not actually dumb. So we have all been trapped at a party or a dinner when the least informed person in the room holds court, never doubting his her own intelligence and confidently lecturing the rest of us with a cascade of mistakes and misinformation. It's not your imagination, people spooling off on subjects about which they know very little and with completely unfounded confidence really happens, and science has finally figured it out. Well, what can we do about it? If you look at Trump, he keeps saying many very strange things, but people take whatever they want out of it because they think there is some benefit for them if he becomes a president. So they ignore what they don't want and they just pick and choose what they want out of all the nonsense he spews, right? So I, for whatever reason, included it again here. In short, people lacking expertise or skill are more likely to also lack the necessary insight to accurately evaluate their expertise or skill, resulting in blatant overconfidence in their competence. They suffer as such a dual burden. Not only do they reach erroneous conclusions and make unfortunate choices, but their incompetence robs them of the ability to realize what they are doing. So you are dumb, you are saying great things that are not true, but you are so dumb that you don't even realize you're being stupid. But the extent of so we are all liable to it in specific contexts, let's say, but the extent of the incongruity between competence and confidence varies between people and over the course of learning. Many proficient people can recall how they gradually realized how little they actually knew as they increased their competence from the most basic level, at the same time as others got stuck on Mount Stupid, as their bloated self-confidence misleads them into believing that they have nothing to learn, that they know everything there is to know. So here we are, competence increasing here and confidence increasing. So with little knowledge comes massive confidence, and you are on top of the Mount Stupid, and you don't come down with competence increasing, or maybe you come down and then you keep climbing back up and reach the proficiency plateau. Or if you are smart, you may climb a silly hill, realize it was silly, and come down here, doubt Dales, is the kind of this is ascent of insight and proficiency plateau. So no amount of competence is going to increase your confidence, let's say beyond 100%. And the doubt dales also increases over time, but eventually you may reach the same point. I don't know. The Dunning-Kruger effect visualized. Take it for what it is, that as expertise, as competence keeps increasing, eventually everybody should get here, but many people may just get stuck here and never come down and make the ascent to proficiency plateau, just get stuck on Mount Stupid. So there is the active business of bending information for self-gain or for fooling others that we will talk about when we come back. So I moved to this room from the main living room a while ago, but this is the first time I'm recording at this time. It's around 5 p.m. and I am kind of fascinated by this reflected light from the building outside my window. So I'm just pointing it out. See you in the next podcast on bending information. Okay.